Support for this podcast comes from the Central Valley Journalism Collaborative, connecting communities with the resources, infrastructure, and networks to ensure a vibrant local free press.
From KVPR in Fresno, this is Central Valley Daily. It's Tuesday, November 26th. I'm Elizabeth Arkalian. Every year, NPR undertakes a concerted effort to put together a list titled Books We Love.
How our year-end list differentiates from other people is that it's pretty democratic. Everybody gets to say.
Coming up, we speak with an NPR reporter who helped put this year's list together. But first, today's headlines. A San Joaquin Valley native may have a seat at the table in President-elect Trump's incoming administration. Congresswoman Lori Chavez DeRemer has been nominated for Secretary of Labor. Chavez DeRemer currently represents Oregon in Congress, but graduated high school in Hanford and studied business at Fresno State. She's known for broadly supporting organized labor, which has ruffled feathers among conservative Republicans. Governor Gavin Newsom returned to Central California on Monday to push a new economic package. As KVPR's Carrie Klein reports, Newsom discussed Kern County's key role in the program.
Speaking from a low-emissions cement plant in Lebec, Newsom touted Kern County's renewable energy infrastructure. He said clean energy is a key focus of the California Jobs First blueprint. That's a plan to invest more in economic growth and innovation around the state.
This is going to be the most renewable, the greenest, cleanest plant of its type anywhere in the United States of America.
In all, 13 regions will divvy up $120 million from the state for projects that create better-paying jobs. Newsom began unveiling the blueprint last week with a similar announcement in Fresno. While in Lebec, Newsom praised former Assemblymember Rudy Salas, who in 2020 introduced a bill that ultimately gave rise to these projects. The program's full framework will be unveiled next year. For KVPR News, I'm Carrie Klein.
A first-of-its-kind California project is off to a rocky start and is facing a lawsuit by a set of advocacy groups. Just last month, Kern County supervisors approved an oil company's plan to build a carbon storage facility called the Carbon TerraVault. This new lawsuit is trying to reverse the approval of the project. Supporters of the project say it would slow climate change and store greenhouse gases deep underground. But local residents and environmental groups argue the county overlooked safety concerns. They also say the county rushed the environmental review process. Kern County has not commented on the litigation. A local community college is investing in the science of distillation. Madera Community College leaders have created a program focused on distilling agave. That's the spiky succulent known as the source of tequila and mezcal. The Fresno Bee reports that this would be the first program of its kind at a California public college. Agave is a growing commodity in the state because it's drought tolerant.
Support for Central Valley Daily comes from Fresno Mazda, part of the Prieto Automotive family, with special holiday financing deals on select models through the end of the year at the new showroom on Blackstone and Barstow. Information at myfresnomazda.com.
And now to our main story. We are now just 2 days away from Thanksgiving and 29 days from Christmas and the start of Hanukkah. And you might still be looking for that perfect gift. If it's the bookworm in your life, NPR has got you covered. KVPR is a member station of NPR. This week, they released their yearly Books We Love list, which this year has over 300 titles ranging from historical fiction to graphic novels and even poetry. Andrew Limbong is a reporter for NPR's Arts Desk and joined KVPR's Carrie Klein to talk about this year's Books We Love. He spoke about how they go about putting the list together.
I think around September, we email all of the staff at NPR and all the critics for some of their favorite reads of the year. And how our year-end list differentiates from other people is that it's pretty democratic. Everybody gets to say, and everyone's tastes are spoken for, right? And so at the end of the time, I think we have 350 titles at the end of the list, at the end of the day. And so what we end up doing, because 350, that's a lot of books, that's a lot of titles, that's very intimidating. We have all these tabs on the side that can help you filter out and find the books that you really want, right? And so what it is, it's here's a big pile of books. it's nearly guaranteed that you'll find something that you'll love.
Absolutely. And then I'm curious, how many books does each one of you personally read? Do you read, and do the other reviewers, the other staff members that you talk to, how many books is each one of these? How much mileage do you each put into this project each year?
We got some, it varies depending on person to person. There are some power readers out there in the staff. There's some other people who are like, you know what, I've only read two books this year, and this one I really loved, and I have a strong feeling about. And so we get a whole swath of like different reading ranges. I think my personal number, I think I'm at like 50, maybe low 50s, possibly. But that includes like if I'm doing a profile of an author, I'll like also read like two or three of their other books. So, that's not quite a super accurate read of 2024 books, but yeah, that's where I'm at.
So of those 50, can you share a little bit more about one or two that were your favorites and why? Why they called to you?
Yeah, so some of them, one of them, let me see. I really liked this book called Victim by Andrew Boriga. What's it about is that he's a debut novelist, and he wrote this book about a writer who's had a rough upbringing, but not that rough. But he kind of fudges how bad his life was in order to sort of like get ahead in the writing world. And so, do you remember that wave when like personal essays were huge, right? And
Mm-hmm.
everyone was writing their personal essays. And so his character in this book gets really famous and popular writing these like wrenching personal essays about trauma and like growing up in the hood or whatever like that. Whereas he was just like a regular, degular, lower middle class kid, went to school every day. And he finds himself in these like funny predicaments where he is now like the voice of a marginalized demographic and all these like in, a room of like well-to-do white people that he's not quite comfortable holding that voice but he's still getting rewarded materially, so he just like keeps going. And like any great story about liars, it doesn't hold up for very long. And once like the house of cards starts falling down, it's really fun and funny to read.
Sounds really neat. And what about, was there a particular book that you reviewed that you thought that you wouldn't like, but that you actually really enjoyed? Like, what were some surprises for you?
Oh, some surprise loves.
Yeah.
Oh, interesting. I the new Murakami book, The City and Its Uncertain Walls. I got a review copy, and then it was just like sitting on the side of my desk, like literally like right here, right? And I was like, gonna go downstairs for lunch or whatever, and I just like started like literally like flipping through it, and then it was one of those experiences where it was an hour later. You know what I mean? I
Hmm.
just read it just to read it, just like, oh, what's the vibe here? And then I just fell inside of a book in a way that I hadn't in a while, just through the sheer power of his writing. And that one was because it does deal with like fantasy elements, right? And generally, that's a high bar for me. I
Hmm.
was surprised at how much I was like into it.
Interesting. And so, while doing all of this reading, and for having put this together for a couple years now, for NPR for a number of years now, have you seen any new trends emerging in recent years? What are some ways that you see literature evolving?
So I think there are some of the business side trends, right? We see like romantasy blowing up as a genre, right? Like that stuff is people love romance, people love dragons. You put them two together, and maybe
Hmm.
you got yourself a stew, as as the saying goes. I think also just like looking at this list in particular in 2024, I feel like there were a lot of books that are low key about reading and like the power of reading and the power of words. And it's one of those instances where I don't know if something was in the water or something was going on, but just like if you look at, one of my favorite books of the year, which was Percival Everett's James, right, which is a retelling of the Huck Finn story. A lot of that is about the power of the written word and how dangerous it is to be able to read and how, that gives you power, right? Another book I'm thinking, even the Murakami book I mentioned, a lot of that is about like the beauty of the written word and like the beauty of bookkeeping of like, being a librarian. On the nonfiction side, there's that book by Salman Rushdie, Knife, which
Hmm.
was his book, his sort of like final say on his experiences after being attacked on stage in 2022.
Right.
And obviously, that's also about what writing can do, like the kind of trouble writing can get you into, but also why that makes it worth it. And so I feel like a lot of writers working in different genres and different media are sort of like trying to grapple and argue for the very existence of writing.
So if our listeners want to check out this list, where can they go, Andrew?
You can just find it at npr.org/books. We'll make sure it's everywhere. We're not trying to hide it, You'll be able to find it.
That was KVPR's Carrie Klein speaking with NPR reporter Andrew Limbong. We recently interviewed local author and College of the Sequoias professor Christina Lynch. Her latest book, Pony Confidential, also made the list. You can scroll back in your feed to November 11th if you'd like to hear that conversation. And that does it for today's show. We would love to hear from you if you've got a story idea or feedback. Just email us at podcast@kvpr.org. Today's episode was produced by Jonathan Linden and KVPR with support from the Central Valley Journalism Collaborative. I'm Elizabeth Arkalian. Find the latest local news anytime at kvpr.org.
No matter what happens in Washington, the NPR Politics Podcast is here for you. For the latest news, insights, and analysis from the election and beyond, listen to the NPR Politics Podcast.